Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave, a rhetorical analysis from chapter 11 on pages 95 to 100. Here we have a rhetorical key on how we highlighted each rhetorical analysis.
So, in this sentence, I must hold on to that to preserve a sense of my identity. It is being shown as pathos, which is showing his name means a lot to Douglas. The sentence underneath that, Mr. Johnson had just been reading The Lady of the Lake and at once suggested that my name be Douglas. This is showing logos, which Douglas is a character of the book Lady of the Lake. Underneath that, there's a word called erroneous, which is showing diction, in other words, meaning being wrong. The sentence after that is showing juxtaposition. I had very strangely supposed, while in slavery, that a few of the comforts and scarcely any of the luxuries of the life were enjoyed at the North, compared with what were enjoyed by the slaveholders of the South. This is showing comparison of the different lifestyles between the North and the South. Underneath that, there's a word on italics, not as A, showing syntax. And a word underneath that is pomp, which is showing diction, which is in other words of being cheap or pretentious or vain display. There's another word of grandeur, which is showing diction, of being impressiveness in appearance and style. Another word, palpably, is another word of diction, in plain sight or obvious. Euphemism is being showed in the words hunters of men, which is another way to say fugitive slave hunter. Diction is being shown as thither, which is towards that place. Syntax is being showed from the quote of, I was hungry and he gave me meat. I was thirsty and he gave me drink. I was a stranger and he took me in. Lived in a neater house, dined in a better table, took, paid for, and read more newspapers, better understood the moral, religious, and political character of the nation than 9/10 of the slaveholders in Talbot County, Maryland. This is showing syntax, which contains semicolon and hyphens. Euphemism is being showed underneath the syntax, which is as bloodthirsty, which is another way to say killer. Ethos is being showed underneath that, which establishes credibility of the old gentleman in the quote, very religious old gentleman as president, who I believe made a prayer, after which he addressed in the meeting follows. Underneath that is showing syntax, which the quote, friends, we have got him here, and I would recommend that you young men just take him outside the door and kill him. This is showing syntax because it contains italicized, and a quote. Imagery is being shown underneath them, which in the quote, a number of them bolted at them, which gives a visual description on how people reacted. Okay. In the words white cockers is being represented as diction, which is another word for white people. Underneath that, another diction is being shown known as habiliments, which is another word of clothing. Underneath that, syntax is being showed from the quote, there was no work too hard, none too dirty. I was ready to saw wood, shovel coal, carry wood, sweep the chimney, or roll oil cast, all of which I did for nearly 3 years in New Bedford, before I became known as the anti-slavery world. This is being shown as syntax because it contains hyphens. In the quote, my meat and my drink, is a metaphor which symbolizes how paper is his meat and drink. Next to the sentence, my soul was set on fire, showing imagery which gives a visual description of how his soul felt. Underneath that, there is a sentence, I did with a joyful heart and never felt happier than when in anti-slavery meeting, which is showing pathos, which uses emotion to express how he felt when he went in the anti-slavery meeting. Underneath that sentence, there's another one with, while attending an anti-slavery convention in Nantucket on 11th of August, 1841, showing logos, which is able to search up the anti-slavery convention, which also contains a date.